from the land of mystery, where dreams become reality, always listening to stories from the past, the present, and the future. This is Back to Your Story.
All right. How you guys doing?
Dude, we're doing great. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I'm kind of fighting off a flu at the moment. Other than that, I think I'm pretty great.
I think that for me, having the both of you on, it means a lot. It really does. I know we're going to dive deep into some very interesting topics. And Alex, when you said, come join me for dinner with my sister and a friend of mine, I was like, oh shit, what am I about to get myself into? But it was awesome, and getting to meet your sister. It's crazy. I see a lot of my own sister in you and the relationship that you guys have. So it's awesome. That connection,
sorry
I guess.
to you.
Seriously, straight up. No, I'm just fucking around. But I want to just kind of dive right into it. Where are you guys from?
LA, but we were born in, I was born in Van Nuys, but I spent my whole life in Santa Clarita since I was 2.
Yeah.
Santa Clarita.
So I'm going to fact check you. You're born in Arleta.
Actually, no. Actually, I was born in Granada Hills Hospital.
Oh,
I have that on my birth certificate.
There we go. Super technical, my friend.
Yeah, same. So all of us, all the Sibs, we were born in Arleta, California, but our parents are of Palestinian descent.
Okay, all right. How long ago did you guys' parents move to the States?
The 70s. My dad came first, and then he went back, and he was basically, kind of looking for a wife at the time. He came here in his 20s, and
Shit.
Yeah, actually, I might jump into this
story,
story right now.
Uh-oh.
So yeah, he came in here. He came in here in his 20s, and the circumstances under which he came here too is pretty interesting, but. Maybe I'll say that for later, but he came out here, kind of started working, his family moved out here, and then, he kind of experienced the American life and realized he was ready for a Palestinian woman. So he actually went, to meet, so he got, in the old-fashioned kind of way,
okay.
You get arranged. Like you get, hey, there's a girl, over here. I want you to meet her. She comes from a good family, that thing. So he went to Lebanon, where my mom was living. She's Palestinian, but she was living in a Palestinian refugee camp over there. And he actually went to go meet my mom's sister.
Whoa.
So he went there with the intention of, meeting my mom's sister and seeing if there was something there. And then he saw my mom, and he's like, whoa. Okay, let me just step aside.
Let me pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah. So he's like, no, I want that one. So he talked to my mom's parents, and my mom was really not about it at first, but I think a lot went into the decision to be open to it, partly, the opportunity also to come to America and that thing too. But my parents had only a week's worth of courtship before they decided to get married.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
1 week?
1 week, yeah. It was like,
My mom was like, I really wanted to go to the States. And she's like, and you thought your dad was cute. And, he was a little bit overconfident.
Yeah,
so
cocky.
that was annoying. And she's like, but I thought I could love him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man. Like, that's just... And so I tried to have that mindset going into dating. I was like, could I marry this man based on I could love him?
But they did the whole, read poetry to each other. It was like, it was cute from the way they talk about it.
Yeah.
But it was much different time, and it was very short.
For sure. I mean, my wife and I took 10 years to get married. So the thought of 1 week, that's just, it's truly fascinating. And they've been together for how long now?
Yeah. So let's say probably around 40 years.
I think they got married in 74.
You want to move the microphone?
We're looking about like...
Oh, I think they got married in 74.
There we go.
So.
45 years? Shit.
45 years. So after 1 week of courtship, they've been together for 45 years. And how many kids?
4 kids.
4 kids.
Yeah. And I think it just, it goes to show when you want to make something work, when you maybe have, the circumstances where you feel like you need to make it work, but, anybody can be happy
for
in
sure.
marriage.
Absolutely.
It's more about, where are you with yourself? I think, too.
Absolutely. I think it's up to the individual, and just the the sheer brilliance of your parents meeting each other for 1 week and then lasting 45 years, having 4 children, your father moving to the States in his 20s, and just kind of going through everything that they have gone through. It blows my mind, because in today's standards, 2020, that is not the norm by any means, or at least for American culture, right? Based in the United States, that is not. And especially we live in a day and age where people get married and divorced quicker than they can say I do. So I do find that fascinating. And for your father coming to the States, what brought him here?
Well, it's funny. One of the things, let's just say that was going on there, because if you're familiar with, that area, Palestine, Israel, it was kind of a necessity if you wanted to, have a better life.
Yeah.
As a Palestinian over there, it wasn't easy. Actually, one story that he tells is that it was that he used to be an activist, and he was, passing out flyers all the time to try to, talk about the occupation and protesting. And, the Israeli authorities over there basically went to his parents, my grandparents, and said, if you don't want your son in prison or jail, you get out of the country. Just leave. And he's a Christian. We come from a Christian background, so it's a little easier to maneuver if you're a Christian versus being Muslim over there, especially when you're applying for a visa to get out. So it was a little easier, I think, for them to probably get out than other people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I just find that fascinating, that just because you're a Christian or you're a Muslim, that makes it easier or not easier. I wouldn't even imagine what that's like for the individual. I mean, me being a white male, born and raised in Southern California, even with the shit that I've gone through, it's not even 1/10 of the stuff that your parents have faced. Growing up with your parents' background, how was that? I mean, was it challenging? Did you guys face any bullshit growing up?
Well, besides having strange snacks in our lunch, no one wanted to trade with me.
Gosh darn it.
Pita bread and hummus and
like,
damn, that sounds amazing to me.
I know, now it does, right? But I don't know, back then, a bag of almonds was not like a fair trade.
Definitely not.
So, I think growing up with parents like that was confusing. I think especially because they were very confused, about their own identity and how to embrace, I guess you could call the culture that they were living in now. Oh. So we kind of felt a little bit lost growing up.
For sure.
And I think most people didn't really understand at that time in those days much about other ethnicities, so I was immediately always boxed into being Mexican, or
hello.
No, so many people would be speaking Spanish to me, like
what the fuck?
No, and I was just like, I'm not. Yeah. But actually, we both know where I ended up at some point because of that. So, but no, yeah. So it was very difficult because we always kind of felt like we were trying so hard to be something else, but we didn't know what we were.
Yeah.
Because my parents, I think they were so traumatized by what they went through that they were just sort of ready to start over.
Absolutely.
And they didn't want to put that trauma onto us. They weren't sure if we would have to deal with any of that.
For sure.
So they tried their best to protect us by sort of saying like, well, this is who you are now, so just figure it out.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it was always kind of, growing up like, you don't need to talk about Palestine and Israel. Don't worry about that. Just focus on your studies. Focus on. I was like, just keep, don't bring that stuff up. I remember like wanting to bring it up in history class all the time, and my mom getting mad at me for telling her about, hey, so I brought up, the Palestinian occupation in class today, and my teacher, and we started talking about it. She's like, why you do this? Don't talk about it. Just keep your head down. Don't talk about it.
Yeah, anytime we would I would learn, we'd have this like fire to talk about it. Yes. My mom would go like, Mom, at school today it came up again. Or with my friends in the car, her immediate reaction was,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because she was like, you're not allowed to talk about this.
And it's like, they don't want that, the experience that they felt over there to, anyway hinder us in our lives here.
I can understand
because
that.
it's a much different perspective here. Our perspective, our parents, and that's one of the things that I really actually loved about growing up to not just immigrant parents, but Palestinian immigrant parents, is that I got a really keen insight into a much different perspective of what's going on in the Middle East specifically and in the rest of the world than the average person would hear.
For sure. Absolutely. And I can understand where your parents are coming from, though, saying, don't talk about it, because your father, was almost, or could have been, imprisoned just for speaking his mind, speaking his heart, speaking his soul. Where in the United States, for the most part, we can pretty much say whatever the fuck we want. And it's so different. So that generational divide of what they've been, what they went through to what you guys have now. I mean, I keep on going back to that. I find it amazing. So going through all of that, at this point in your life, what are you guys even doing? What do you guys do?
I am a mortgage lender.
Okay.
So I've been in banking. Well, I would say right out of college. I majored in finance in college, finance, real estate, and minored in history. And right out of college, I was a teller through college, and then I became a personal banker. And then from then on, I've just been in finance. So now I'm a mortgage lender, and I finance homes.
Nice.
Yeah. I am a former film producer. Nice. I'm a behavior therapist now. And I also develop a virtual reality application,
That's incredible.
for therapeutic practice.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
So.
Growing up, though, what was this something that you really envisioned yourself doing?
Okay, so when I was in high school, I just, the cool thing so I'm the youngest of my family, the youngest of 4, and I'm the only one I think that got to spend the most time with my mom. Okay. Because my siblings, when they were younger, both my parents worked. And then when I hit a certain age, my mom kind of stopped working and just was a full-time homemaker. And so she kind of drilled it into me hey, you want to be like an investment banker or finance, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so she's like, don't bother with other things. These are the things you want to do, And so I've always liked talking numbers and finance and that kind of thing. And, there's 2 things that and it's cool because I think that I'm on the track of what I envisioned, at least in high school, where, I thought I was going to be an investment banker out of college. That did not happen. But I always said, I want to work in finance. My true passion is actually teaching. I love to teach whatever it is, anything that I know, whether it's a subject, history, or just how to do something that I know how to do. I just like to explain
for sure concepts
to people that are not easy, but that I can explain and get them together. Because once somebody understands what I'm trying to teach them, it's a rewarding feeling. So
absolutely,
and I do that in my job, which is cool. I get to because not everybody understands finance and home mortgages. So when I get to talk to somebody and explain it to them, so they understand it, and they're like, "Wow, no one talked to me that way, or explained it that way. Thanks for taking the time."
Definitely,
that's just what I like to do, and that's what makes me good at what I do.
I think it's really important what you do and the aspect of educating, right? Because in the American school system, we really don't do that. We don't set our students up for the real world. We just kind of just copy paste, and being able to hear people say, "Hey, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about." And then you having the sense to be like, okay, well, this is how we do it, and break it down bit by bit. It makes the world of a difference for that individual. What about you?
What was the question? No.
I have no idea. No, but VR, behavioral therapist, film
this is
producer.
What I always wanted to do.
For sure.
I think like Alex mentioned, my mom, pushing him into that. I have to say, I don't think for me, my experience with my parents was a lot different. My mom was just totally my biggest fan. She's like, whatever you want to do it. And her dream for me was to have a talk show, which is so weird. Yeah. So I'm here to take notes and steal your But no, she always wanted me to be in the field of media, film, producing. So I kind of did do, what I wanted to do, and she loved that. So,
absolutely.
But, I don't know how much you know about the industry. It seems like quite a bit. That is a lot like being a therapist on the set.
Sure.
Producing is a lot. There's so much psychology involved, and it just came very naturally, and I had a background in it already, and I had a lot of people pushing me into that field. Yeah. So it kind of came to me. But then I started hitting a lot of walls in therapy and feeling very frustrated and realizing it was because I feel like the tools and the resources we have are still kind of archaic.
Yes.
We're not moving into a more progressive
For sure.
treatment
Absolutely.
plan for anyone, really. So I heard about VR with PTSD and using it with a lot of cancer patients and things like that. And I thought, why aren't we using this for people who have social impairments and other things? Anyway, why aren't we using it everywhere?
Absolutely.
So I decided to kind of marry my love for film and therapy and create something that I thought could help people on a more global level.
For sure. Absolutely. You know, I just kind of keep on going back to your parents, right? Everything that they went through, and then to be able to instill the thought to just fucking go for it, follow your dreams, do what makes you happy. So many people around the globe just kind of get stuck in this routine. And so for your parents, everything that they went through, passing that down to the next generation, it's just amazing.
Yeah, well, I think part of, too, what inspired me was their pain. Like, I felt like this is a tool I could eventually bring to, war zones and, other sort of conflicted areas in the world.
For sure.
And yeah, I mean, it was, like you said, it was kind of that, like seeing their fire, like live vicariously through us, but also thinking, I wish I could have helped you with something like this.
Yeah, the other thing that I really, took from them that's helped me, just in life and get through is that they just worked all the time. Like, they got here, and from the moment my dad had like 3 jobs, and then he put himself through school while having a family, working got his master's degree. Like, he just worked nonstop. And I'd be sitting around, like, even in college or like when I had my first full-time job, and I'm just thinking, like, damn, like I would think back to just like how, like, if I'm not doing something productive, then I'm wasting time, because you need to be always doing something productive, And so I think that by also thinking that, we've also, in our family too, like, as siblings, we really appreciate leisure time at the same time too. Like, we just know how to, like, not do anything at the same time, and then feel guilty for not doing anything. So like,
it's important though.
There's that, just the guilt you live with too, just for, I don't know if it's having a Catholic upbringing or having an immigrant upbringing, but guilt is always somewhere involved in the mix there.
No, for sure.
For everything.
And having your parents, come from where they came from, being with the Christian background. I just heard you say Catholic. So were you brought up Christian, Catholic?
Yeah, so it was. I know I was raised Catholic. I don't know, and it could just be our proximity to a Catholic church. It's just kind of
what they chose for us in a way, because my mom was raised Roman Catholic, my dad was Orthodox.
Yeah, Russian Orthodox.
And because they wanted us to go to a good school, because growing up, we weren't always middle class, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So they were afraid of the school systems. There was a Catholic school. My mom felt comfortable with the Catholic Church because she was raised that way, and they sort of just made that decision to raise us Catholic.
For sure.
But I think after we got confirmed, they just said it was like up to you.
That was it. That was it. And at this point in your life, does the Catholic upbringing, is it, do you guys still practice it? Do you guys still, push forward in it, or is it
right before I'm about to crash my car, I suddenly become Catholic?
Always, right? God, please help me.
I know.
I know. Somehow it's funny you said that, because like I always go back to saying a prayer. Like, I'm really scared, or I'm really going to some. I'll fall back on that. But
if like I'm going to get my, sorry to say this, Alex, but if I'm going for like an STD check,
so you started saying like the Hail Mary, Our Father,
Catholic, exactly.
All of it.
I'm
love
like,
it.
It's been my whole life.
Yeah.
Just don't do me.
Come on.
That's before, but I'm a straight there. You do me this solid, I promise.
It's so classic that way, but yeah.
No, I would say though we're very far from religious. Other than those moments, I guess.
Yeah.
But and I think Jennifer, you're probably the only one that's been confirmed at the family.
No, Billy, no.
Billy too. I don't know, maybe,
so.
but I definitely have. And I just remember having to go to Sunday schools and then mom doing my homework for me.
No way. It's a good mama.
Oh no,
it's like someone's got to do it.
He's going to get the day.
There are so many memories of my mom doing our homework because she couldn't deal with like embarrassment of our failure.
Like
that guilt factor.
She probably did like the majority of our elementary school projects, like for sure.
No way.
Yeah, we were so bad at that.
She'd be happy too. She's like, oh, I got got the name, huh?
Granted, though, Brock, what you said earlier was kind of why. Like, she didn't have that. I mean, she grew up in a camp in Dubai, which is above Beirut, and she was treated like dog shit for being Palestinian by the Lebanese. It wasn't any better there. I think she didn't have these, what she thought were, like opportunities as a child to really learn things in a creative way. And so I think she actually was enjoying herself.
For sure.
Like, this was fun for her.
Yeah.
And she was like, wow, this is what it's like. So I think it was that, and then also, not wanting us to bring any shame onto the family
for sure.
with an F.
No, and that's such a good point that you say. The shame, the guilt. Going through that now, like everything that you guys have gone through. When you guys make your decisions, when you guys make your choices, is there any type of just kind of shame, guilt that when it's your time to have kids, that you think that was something that you'd pass down?
Yeah, I would say guilt is something that I've had to like work through. Like just it's like a way of raising. Like, say if I was in those shoes, there's better ways than to use guilt to like get your kids to do something.
Absolutely.
But there's also a lot of worse ways to do something too.
100%.
So, like, I'm not complaining about that, but when I make my decisions and when I feel certain things, I realize there's a level of, or like some sort of guilt influencing those decisions, and that's something that probably over the last couple years is really, like, I've really noticed, and then have changed.
For sure. Absolutely. It's like really noticing our weakness, our flaws, whatever it is inside of us. And, we get to a certain age, and if you can really recognize those, as I've gotten older, I try to pull all my bullshit to the front. I tell my wife, call me out on my shit 24/7, say it right then and there. And I used to be the type of person where I was like, fuck you. Like, I don't want to hear that shit. But then something changes, right? And you either face it or you don't. You go to the left, you go to the right. And we have so many decisions and choices throughout our life that we can go one way or the other way. And just the story that you guys are sharing with me, with your parents and your upbringing, what was it like having 4 siblings? Because I had 3 and it was fucking chaos.
So are you one of 3?
I'm one of 3.
Okay, yeah. So
Middle child.
I loved it personally. I love having siblings, but what's very interesting, the dynamic is that we're all like roughly 4 years apart.
Okay.
I'm the youngest, and my brother's the oldest, and there's 2 other girls in between. There's about 12 years of difference. But for some reason, I was very close with my brother growing up too, like from my adolescence ages. He was someone who, I looked up to a lot, and luckily for me, he lived at home for a while, so we got to be like, we got to have a cool relationship.
That's awesome.
I got to, see what to do, what not to do.
For sure.
And I think being the youngest too, it made it easier for me to like have more freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
With Jennifer and Billy, my parents being so young too, and like stressed out probably all the time. They probably had a lot shorter leash.
We always tell Alex like he got it so good because my parents were like always giving us the belt,
for
and like
sure,
getting whipped all the time. And then by the time Alex, they're just tired.
They're just done. They're like, fuck it.
So we would like have to hit Alex.
There was a level of resentment, I think, a little bit for a while.
I'm sure.
Like, shit.
That's so funny.
I don't think I resented you. I just didn't really know you, which we talk about.
Yeah, so that's funny because
Wow.
Jennifer and I didn't really have a close relationship at all until I got to like 25.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, because what is the age gap between you two again?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
So
8
I
years.
just didn't really know him.
Wow, that makes sense though.
So just to give everybody like a physical appearance, I'm the biggest in my family, and so probably because of better nourishment.
Yes.
But
So he says.
I'm kind of viewed by some of my siblings as more of a older brother, bigger brother. For some reason, I think it's
And
just,
so am I.
yeah. So
Sadly,
older brother?
The older brother.
Yeah.
Alex sometimes says you're my other brother. I don't know what to think about.
I mean, I'm physically bigger, but also just I don't know. I think I just take on. There's certain things about me that I like to take on responsibility for others in my family and people that I know, that I just kind of like being that big brother role too.
For sure. Absolutely. It's that education.
Alex likes to feel like he's taking care of people in order for him to feel safe. I think it's a safety thing too. Like if he's got everything under control and he can help or whatever, then there's no uncertainty. There's no chaos and stuff. And
Absolutely.
so it's kind of nice to have that around. But then I'm always like, who's looking after you?
Well, yeah, and that's it's real cool because I had like with my sister Melissa, she's the one between Jennifer and I, so we're like 4 years apart. I was really close to her when I was really young. Like I was like 4 to 8 or something like that. We were really close, and then she became a teenager and had hormones and all that. So,
Bye, Felicia.
Yeah. And that's when then me and my brother had a really close relationship, and that was more like up until my teenage years and getting to college, and then it wasn't until like after college that Jen and I started getting really close, and that unsurprisingly happened to coincide with relationship issues and going through my first relationships, and then Jennifer is like, I can handle this shit. This is what I know. And then we bonded over that, I think.
Yeah, I think I was also not around a lot. Right?
Yeah.
Like I was just I flew the coop really early and like just had to, I don't know, just live my life.
Yeah.
Live my life.
I had to live
You
my
moved to
life.
like San Francisco when I was in like high school, or no, younger than high school, I think. I don't know. When did you move to San Francisco?
Well, it was 2003 or 4.
Yeah, high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was like pieced out.
You're like, later, later,
yeah.
bitches.
And I think that Alex kind of liked that too in a way. Like he always wanted to know about my experiences, where I was, what I was doing, all this stuff. He was drawn to that, and I thought, this kid's taking an interest in me. I was like, please, child, come.
Yes, come,
Come
child.
under my wing. And so I really liked that, and it really brought the curiosity out in me too. So I was like, tell me more about you. And we just bonded, and then all of a sudden felt like, wow, he's a lot like me.
No.
I never knew it my whole life. He's a lot like me. And I actually saw a lot of the struggle I went through my parents. I saw him going through as well. And it was kind of forcing me to face that too.
Absolutely.
So we actually talk about our relationship with our siblings a lot, or our parents, and how they were doing the same things to us because of their trauma, but it having a very different impact on us because of who we are as people.
Absolutely.
And that bringing us together too. We bonded through that a lot. So.
For sure. Connecting on those issues, and it makes sense. You're 8 years older, so when you were 10, Alex, she was 18. Right. So
Our shared experiences, and we didn't have much of that until we were older. So until I had a little more life experience that we could start bonding and relating to each other. And I did always look up to Jen because she just was always doing something big. Like she was traveling, she was living her life, and like, more so than, anybody. Like I would say, like in relation to my other siblings, I view my other 2 siblings more like either peers or younger siblings, where I view Jen as really like my older sister that has helped, kind of guide me a little bit.
Our siblings are going to make you burn this later. And also I have to be honest, like I think it was my activism, my love for Palestine, and the desire to tell the story of Palestinian people. Alex was like, this is what I want to do. Jen, like, and he'd be like, next time you go to a rally, I want to come. Next time you talk on this point, I want to be there. And then I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But then it kind of came to a point where Alex was so invested in it that I was turning to him being like, look, I've got to do this huge presentation. I've got artists coming in from Palestine. I was hosting a big event in London, and I turned to Alex for my opening speech at this event, and was he stays like the student became the master, the teacher, whatever. Yeah, so I think that also kind of bonded us, was our sort of mutual interest in that.
For sure. You don't live in London, but you live in England, correct?
I live in London.
You live in London.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes. You were in San Francisco, London. Did that happen?
I've been everywhere. Well, actually, my job brought me to London, so I was kind of headhunted by an agency to work with a very specific type of clientele.
For sure.
Basically, high profile. So I had already a background and a name for myself in LA, working with industry types, we could say. So high profile, celebrity, whatever, annoying, blah. So it's just like no names dropping on the floor today. But yeah, so I had already established myself in LA, and somehow my name traveled there, and that was like, I don't know, it was really strange, Brock, because I never saw it coming.
For sure.
And I was in between clients, and I thought, okay, I had an offer in Boston.
Wow.
One in Maryland, so that was a no.
You're like, no, no.
Yeah, and then the London offer. So I just obviously my mom was like, "You better take that."
So you better take it.
She was like, "Yeah." And then now, of course, when I got now I'm a citizen,
That's
so I have dual
amazing.
citizenship, and it's kind of nice that I come from refugee parents, and I could be like, "What's up? We have 2 passports now."
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of a big deal for me because of that. Because it's like, you know what, all you did, you worked so hard, it wasn't for nothing. Now I can say I have, 2 citizenships,
Absolutely.
and I'm traveling and I'm happy, and I think that makes them really happy. But now
For sure.
Now they never want me to move back. They're like, you have to do more. Don't come
Keep
home.
pushing,
That means failure.
Yes. Yeah, but it is. It's incredible. It's incredible. I mean, to go through everything that you guys have gone through, and now to be at this point in your life, you've got dual citizenship, living in London, following your dreams, pushing forward. Take away, your parents and everything they've gone through, just to be able to get to this point in your life. Most people don't ever get to see that. And so don't stop. Continue to push. Continue to move forward. What are some of the next things that you see yourself, working on? Because the other day we were talking about virtual reality.
Yeah.
How does that kind of play into, everything that you do?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the thing is, Brock, I really suffer from imposter syndrome. Do you know what that is? Yeah, we all have imposter syndrome, right? Where we're thinking I'm not gonna achieve this. Who am I? I don't have the qualifications for that. Well, this is mental. But I think for the first time in my life, I pushed through that, and I am now I can do everything. And I think what's important for me are 2 things. And one is, as I mentioned before, it's being able to help people on a much more global level, and being able to make a difference, leave my stamp sort of in that sense. I really just want to help a lot of people navigate in this world.
Fuck yeah.
And the second one is to bring more awareness to the occupation and the people who have died trying to do that. Just trying to bring awareness is scary.
It is.
And I think this is why my mom's always scared of it. It's not a joke. People who try to expose the truth are often targeted, and oftentimes they're attacked and they're gone.
Yeah,
So I'm not trying to go to that dark place, but
we'll get there. We'll get there. I promise.
So I feel like as I'm getting older, there's this feeling that my life purpose is about truth.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, my focus is going to be this virtual reality application that I think will be able to help a lot of people, and making more films and more art. And bringing more artists working together to, make it more known about what's happening in Palestine.
For sure.
So maybe moving back.
Yeah, you think that's in the deck?
Yeah,
Jen,
definitely moving to the States.
What about your VR app? Tell me about that going into, what we're doing.
Well, I thought I did just talk about it, but I'll talk about it some more.
What is the app?
So the virtual reality app is designed to be used on the Oculus Go.
Yes.
And what it does is it puts young adults, it's aimed to help young adults on the autistic spectrum. It puts them in social situations that can be really difficult, I even think for neurotypicals, to get through. In a choose your own adventure style. It's very cinematic. We use live actors. So you might be at a party, and you'll have 1 minute to acclimate or acclimatize,
there
as
we
the
go.
Brits say.
Yeah.
And in that time, you are able to, if you're at a barbecue, you might hear your coach or your therapist say, no, that girl, she's on her cell phone. She's probably not someone you want to approach right now. Or don't eat those hot dogs, they're raw. Or don't drink from that cup, there's probably someone else's alcohol in there.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Then you will go into a situation maybe dealing with public display of affection.
Okay.
So a lot of our patients really struggle with that at parties.
I get it.
So they might be right in front of a couple making out. You might be right in front of a couple making out, and someone else kind of trying to distract you. And if you don't have the appropriate gaze, you'll be prompted where to turn your eyes.
No way.
And once you've passed this level, the next level would be the correct response in the correct amount of time.
Okay.
So the screen will pause and you'll have 3 options, one being pro-social, one being antisocial, and one being awkward. So one might be, so the guy might stop and look at you who's making out with the girl and say, "What's your problem? Like, why are you looking at us?" And so one option might be like, "I smell Hot Pockets." That would be awkward.
I love that answer, though. Fuck, I'm going to say that next time. Just stare at people and say,
We have great
"Smell Hot
awkward.
Pockets."
Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to use that.
Please do.
I will.
Our awkward options are always the best. Like, what's the Wi-Fi password on a date or something? So like, or the other one could be, or it just says stop and stare, keep looking, and then the other one is, apologize and talk to the person next to them, or turn and walk away. So based on what you choose, you go right into that outcome, and we try to make the outcomes as intense. Like intensely, consequating as possible or intensely rewarding as possible. And if it's awkward, it's just hard to read. So we can teach them, this was hard to read because you were probably being awkward.
For sure.
And then we could have like other options and all that. So, and then after this, we do, we offer what's called a unique curriculum.
Okay.
So if someone has their own specific issues that's not in our standard curriculum, they can contact us. They can tell us what the problem is. We read their case, and then we create that world for them.
Whoa, that's incredible.
Yeah. And I guess the dream is taking it to real time. So that would be the dream for me. So basically, you could just, after you've mastered the standard curriculum, you can go into a designated space for this with maybe one technician and a therapist, and you just wear your packs and you go into the world that's designed for you to practice in real time and talk.
Awesome.
Is that like a kind of like a World of Warcraft situation where it's like a role playing with everybody?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So, I mean, we would recommend that you go in with an accredited or certified licensed therapist. Sorry, and then after that, after maybe 1 or 2 successful trials.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
I think that's like the future of everything.
All of it.
Like just fully integrating.
I think we're behind. If you ask me, like I feel like if this isn't happening right now,
I get it.
It's definitely headed there. Maybe not so much for therapy, which is annoying, or for helping, like I said, people in conflicted areas.
But like the idea of creating like a safe but ultra real scenario for people on the spectrum to like educate, learn about how to be socially acceptable. I mean, that's just like the best thing you can get to actually having like thrusting them into a real environment.
Brock actually, he asked me a really good question, which I think is worth mentioning, which it would be amazing to reverse that and have neurotypicals in there to see what it's like
absolutely.
to be on the autistic spectrum, right?
For sure. People just, they do not understand if you don't know someone that has autism or just ever been around it. You just can't understand or relate to individuals that have this. And so being able to create something like this on both sides, I find it so fascinating. And I'm a big proponent for Oculus, and I know where that direction is going. It's incredible. And so for you to be able to do this, be a part of it, big kudos to you, because this is where these new emerging technologies are going to help transform society in the future and give people a real understanding to how we might not all be the same and our brains all might be different, but to really relate and see through that individual's point of view. It's what we need. We live in a day with mass shootings and all this fucking shit going on, especially in the States, right? And it blows my mind. I had a client of mine. I've been cutting his hair for a long time, and he has Asperger's, and really great kid. He's like 23 years old, and it was right after Saugus High School got shot up, and a couple people died, and the really fucked up part about it is like I knew it was going to happen. We all think in Santa Clarita it's a bubble, and it's not. Life is just it's just not that way. And so when it happened here, I was just obviously talking about it, and he opened up to me in a way that just kind of put my mouth on the floor. And he goes, one of the big reasons that this happens a lot, and I can just speak from my own experience, is I remember being in high school, and I was that kid in the back of the class. I was the kid that was made fun of all the time. And it was just a select few people that made fun of him. But he goes, I remember going home, and there was a few times where I really contemplated this. He goes, I wanted to go to the school and shoot that fucking place up. And he goes, the reason was, he goes, for me, it wasn't these individuals hurting me. I wanted everyone to feel my pain. Mm-hmm. And I for me, I appreciate that he shared that story with me, and it's given me a newfound perspective. And so what you're creating, through VR for individuals with autism, reversing that so people can actually take a peek into this world, it's just educating and just I want these things to be more out in the open. Bring this to the front. Let's stop fucking putting a blind eye behind it. And so thank you so much for doing what you do.
Oh, totally. So it's called Social Wise.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
Social Wise.
Social Wise, like socialize, but wise instead.
Yeah.
Pick it up.
Is there a website?
Yeah, there is. So I'll share it with you. But it's socialwisevr.com.
Perfect.
And right now it's just being made available for professionals.
Okay.
But if you want it, you can get it for free through the website right now if you are a practicing therapist.
There we go. Check it out.
Okay. So thank you for letting me share that, because it is really important.
Yeah, that was a really interesting story.
And
it's important.
And listening to you, it just makes me think of so many of the students that I've helped, and it's a sad story, and it shouldn't be like this anymore.
No.
And so, it just makes me want to do this right now.
Absolutely. No, I get it.
But, yeah.
Just keep on pushing what you're doing, and you'll be able to take this for so many different aspects of life, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for, being a part of this revolution of change. We need this. We need people to stand up and say enough is enough, right? So thank you very much. Absolutely. No, I'm not. So handsome man over here. The very first time I met you, I was cutting hair at a wedding, and I was styling people's hair, right?
Yeah. So you were, it was a mutual acquaintance. It's actually a coworker of mine who I think you knew him through maybe his brother-in-law
Paul.
Or something, Paul. And you were cutting his hair on his wedding day.
Yeah.
And he happened to invite me up to, where he was getting ready. And I was a cool honor too, because we'd been friends for not a terribly long time, but he invited me to his wedding, and I was excited. And I got there, and it was really cool. Everybody was drinking, and I saw him cutting, and then I saw you cutting his hair. I don't know how the conversation started.
I don't either.
But
this is a love story.
yeah, no,
It was love at first sight.
totally, because you started one thing led to another, and I was talking to you, and I don't know if it was do you have a necklace that you have like a
I did. It was a
Hebrew
chai.
symbol? Yeah. And I remember seeing that too, and I was like, okay, he's Jewish, and this is probably going to be a conversation that we're going to have. But it's at this point in my life, I have a ton of Jewish friends, and I'm very open and understanding of all sides of that topic. So I have nothing against that. But you and I were talking, and then we started talking politics.
Yes, we did.
And you were very, inquisitive and very open. And we started talking about Afghanistan and Iraq, and then all the general politics. And we were just going off. And I remember, his name was Jonathan, the guy whose wedding it was. He looks over. He's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, you guys are gonna love each other."
Yeah. It's so funny. Paul said the same thing before I even went there, and I was like, "Who's Alex? I don't know who the fuck this guy is." And at the end of the time, we're freaking sitting there bullshitting, chatting. It was just, it was love at first sight.
So yeah, and then I remember that you were like, they were like, dude, we should totally grab a beer together sometime and talk. And then so it was probably like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months later. And then, I finally had, so I've had like, very cheap haircuts my whole life. I was in Dallas on like a business trip, and I was like, I need to get a legit haircut for this trip. So as soon as I land there, I find this like a really nice barber. He cuts my hair, and then I realized, wow, there's a big difference between a $20 haircut and like a $50 haircut.
Yeah.
And then so I was like, oh, I remember Brock cuts hair. Let me hit him up. And so I was like, I need a new barber. And so I hit you up, and I was like, hey, can I come get your haircut? And you have this awesome studio in the back of your house, and it's like a cool setup. He's got like a refrigerator back there. He's got beer. He's got like
second man cave.
Second man cave. And it's funny because the first time we cut our hair, it ends up turning into a 2.5 hour talking session about politics and philosophy.
That's so normal.
So it was cool, and I was like, man, I really enjoy talking to this guy. But also, I need to make sure I don't plan an appointment after this haircut because I'm not getting out of here anytime soon. So
that's an ongoing story.
Yeah, so I just kind of in the future, I was anticipating, okay, I got to be there for 2 to 3 hours getting my haircut.
Yep.
But every time we've chatted, it's always been just really cool.
It's been fantastic, and for me, hair has introduced me to so many amazing people. I mean, we wouldn't be sitting here today, right? That conversation stimulated a haircut, and then now we're here. All this time later. But I always found it fascinating, the stories that you shared with me about, your life, Palestinian and Israeli conflict, and just geopolitical issues. And for me, I'm a big, I don't know, I'm the type of person that I like to get into deep intellectual-based conversations, and it's just how I've been, I guess my whole life. I remember as a kid looking at my father, and he would do the same thing, and I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing talking for 3-4 hours?
Oh, we know this. Just on and on.
Yeah,
that's how we grew up. So obviously, it's something.
So the joke used to be like American pastime is baseball, or poker. Like ours is like
Politics.
Yep. Politics.
And, actually, to be honest, it turned me off to politics because of that. Because I was young and it wasn't broken down for me, and I was like, no. And then growing, up and understanding it, I regretted that, I wasn't listening, paying more attention, and I felt like that was time wasted almost, So yeah, I can see why you two can, because when you find someone like that, or who has that sort of familiarity, I guess it's kind of familial, that you would connect, because it's like,
and the biggest difference that I think that I found with you, and that later in my life that is become important, is it's not just parroting, like points and sides of right versus left. It's having a deep understanding of what is actually going on, and being willing and open to talking about all sides. Of
course, absolutely,
and not just just sticking to the one side because you can't be right. It's me versus you. It's like our side versus your side, and that's just what we. And I mean, not to get into a broader thing, but that's what's going on today.
Of course,
it's just like
it is.
Everybody's just like, my side's right, your side's wrong, and that's it.
Of course, and no one's willing to just kind of put their shit at the forefront and say, hey, sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. It's like you're either left or you're either right, but there's no down the middle, right? In American politics, right, especially, it's like, Republican, Democrat, right, left. And it's for me, as I've gotten older, it's like, that is not how life is. It's not black versus white. There's so many fucking shades in between. And I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump, right? At the end of the day, if you are a good person, if you have, just that's what it comes down to. It's like a good person, a good heart. I don't give a shit, right? I can always take something from someone. And we get so stuck into our tribes. It's either this way or that way. And just speaking with you, you've opened up my eyes so much to so many different topics, right? Really sharing with me what is going on in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. But
why do you think that you're like that versus others who not? Do you think it's your parents that were very open-minded?
No.
So why do you think that you're like that? Because I find that too. People say that people are, that's a learned behavior, but I don't think so. I think our parents were sometimes had these staunch opinions about that. They were maybe sometimes uninformed even, and we still would fight against that.
Of course.
But what?
What is it? The internet? No, I'm just joking. but who freaking knows, right? For me, it was for the longest time my whole life, I just buried shit. If someone called me out on something, it was like, fuck you, dude. And then I got to this point in my life where I started introducing hallucinogens, psilocybin, LSD, and it really started opening.
This is Alex's language you're speaking right now.
It's true. It's true. That's the thing about, and if anybody's read up on how psilocybin works, and I remember this was part of my journey. Psilocybin was part of the journey that I had that really was one part, but it was a very important part of opening my mind and evolving, because it gets you outside of your subjective brain where you already have opinions on everything. It shuts it down, and it makes you able to take a step back and look at things at a very objective and outside of your normal perspective.
Absolutely. I go so deep inside, and I never ever, I think a lot. I'm always have. That's how I've always been, second guessing myself probably on too much shit. But what psilocybin has done is it's opened up parts of my brain. It's allowed me to look from the outside in at a new perspective on life. And so if you ask me like, well, what's different? I don't know if that's what I can point it to, but for sure I can say, my upbringing, it was either this way or that way. My dad always preached, I deserve respect just because I'm your fucking dad. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are. You have to give respect to get respect. And that's my opinion. And you could think that I am wrong, right? Just because they're your parents. No, you have to meet in the middle. And I was put through a lot of shit, and I just kind of started making the decisions early on. And then when I reintroduced, psilocybin into my life, probably 27, 28, I'm 33 now, my brain started to evolve, and I started to read more, listen to a lot more podcasts, and maybe pull away from social media too. I'm not a huge social media person unless it's for business. I'm not. I'm just not. And so for me, the information that I get is the information that I seek, right? So that's kind of how I became, I can't say that's how I became who I am, but that's really when my brain started to change and evolve. And I think it's really important to have an open perspective on life, right? So I'm sure people listening to me are like, dude, fuck you. So how do I say this? When we started talking, about the Palestinian and Israeli conflict, I didn't know fucking anything, right? I shared with you that I was going on birthright, right? And when you started opening your mouth, right, I was just kind of blown away about the atrocities that are going on, especially everything that, my people, the Jewish people, have gone through in their own life, to be able to cause this on another group of people. Growing up, I'm sure you guys, heard it all. Your dad was an activist. What is going on at this current point in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict?
And I also, I can't say enough about how, there is a clear difference between, being Jewish and being Zionist.
Yeah.
Because the biggest supporters that really make the biggest impact for Palestine are Jewish people. Like Jewish Voice for Peace is an organization that is one of the most vocal, anti-Zionist organizations that really make an impact on bringing awareness to what's going on over there. So, and even when I was in college, I was part of Students for Justice in Palestine. I became part of that because I read an article in the Sundial. I went to CSUN, and it was an article about what was going on in 2009, which was I forget what the name. It was Operation Cast Lead. It was the the first time after having Gaza being under siege that Israel had launched a huge offensive in Gaza and just massacred, I want to say hundreds of Palestinians at the very least. But I remember reading this really eloquent article by someone. His name was Joseph Glatzer, I think at the time. And so I was like, I got to meet this guy. And so I went over and met him, and he was running a Students for Justice in Palestine thing, and he was Jewish, and then he was this white guy, and I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like, and I ended up joining the group, and it was. He was a bigger advocate than I was at the time, because coming from my upbringing. I was always don't talk about this stuff too, and I always want to, and so that really opened my eyes into who is really fighting for this cause.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the end of the day, what's going on is, there are a people for the last, I guess, the Palestinian people for the last, since you could say 1948, who have been living as at best second-class citizens, at worst prisoners. I mean, I guess the question is where to start in that whole topic. But I mean, if we wanted to start with what's just going on today, I mean, you have people who, they I guess
they are basically living in an open air prison.
Yeah. So I mean, there's Gaza,
yes,
and there's the West Bank, and then there's the refugees. So you have Gaza right now since 2006, which is an open air prison in the sense that they cannot leave Gaza. They get restricted on how much literally they put on a diet and how much food and calories can come in. They're living in squalor because their water treatment plants have all been bombed. Their power plants are running at 40% or less because they can't get fuel. And they're living in absolute squalor and 40% unemployment because they are being blockaded on all sides. They're blockaded on the border with Israel. They're blockaded at sea. They can't go more than a few miles off the coast for fishing. And believe it or not, they're also blockaded on the Egyptian side because the Egyptian government's just as complicit in this siege that's been going on since 2007, which is 12 years. So you have children living in Gaza who are 12 years old who have never ever seen outside of Gaza because they're not allowed to leave.
Oh my gosh.
And there have been 3 attacks on Gaza that have just devastated not only the infrastructure, the economy, the morale, the people, but somehow, and I don't know how, they resist and they have not capitulated, because that's the ultimate goal of this siege is to get them to just accept a fate that whatever given to them, you accept it. And they have for 12 years have decided that they want their dignity. And they will resist, and I guess we can go all the way back to the start of this whole situation, which 1948. I mean, really 1880 something is when this whole thing started, which was Theodore Herzl, who was the head of the Zionist Congress. Basically, they were looking for a Jewish homeland, and they went to Palestine at the time, which was under the Ottoman Empire. It was the region of Palestine, or the province of Palestine. And, there are actually, articles and reports of, delegations from this Congress going out there and coming back and saying, this land already has a people married to it. Like, there's people here. They were looking at, Poland at the time for a potential Jewish state. But ultimately, they settled on Israel and Palestine and recreating the ancient country of Israel.
Yeah.
And in 1917, 1917, the Balfour Declaration, which is a monumental thing because that was at towards the end of World War I. It was Lord Balfour in the UK basically he issued this declaration saying that Palestine will be a future home for the Jewish people, and that it did go into other lengths of saying that they must live in peace and respect the rights of the indigenous people, but that this is a promised land to them now, and they're gonna be able to build a homeland there. And that's a pivotal moment in the Palestinian story, because that, I guess you would say, not only indicated what was to come, but it laid down the legal framework of this is Britain, which was a superpower at the time, saying that we're going to make this happen. And so, you remember that there was people. Now, one of the arguments that is always made is that Palestinians never had a country, which is fair. They've never had an independent country. They've been part of the Ottoman Empire. They've been part of the Roman Empire. It's always been Palestine or Mandate Palestine or the Palestinian people. There has always been a people there named Palestine. If you want to go back to the Bible, you'd have like the Philistines, right?
Yeah.
And there's always been that culture of Palestinian food, of Palestinian everything. But granted, we've never had a country, but that doesn't matter. We've always had rights. We've lived in peace. There's always been the Palestinian people, and that's where they live.
Of course.
And so that's been one of the biggest things. Part of Zionist philosophy is to kind of erase the identity of Palestinians, to try to say that they're just Arabs and they're from all over the Middle East. They're just they can go back to another Arab country, but. I mean, imagine you for generations living somewhere, and then it's in the United States. You're just always from this area of California. You get expelled, and you say, you go to New York. You can just go live there with the New Yorkers.
Fuck that.
It's like
fuck that.
Nothing's worse than that.
No, yeah.
I've been living that SoCal life.
Come on, motherfucker. How dare you?
Yeah.
No, but it's so true, and I knew that when we started talking and after, we had that conversation that day in my studio, and I shared with you I'm going on Birthright, and then I started the podcast, and I knew that there is a very strong chance that me bringing this up, me having you guys on, and if they listen to it, they're not going to let my wife and I go. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, internally I said, fuck that. Because when I looked up everything that you have been talking and fact-checked everything, not that you're a liar by any means, but you have to, right? You can't believe everything that everyone says. I saw the atrocities that are happening to your people, to the Palestinian people. And in 2020, for that to happen to anyone blows my fucking mind. How is there not enough land for everyone to share? Why is there not peace? And there is this ongoing issue in Middle East, but in American culture and American politics, we don't talk about this. Mm-hmm. Most people, I would say, don't know what is going on between the Palestinians and Israelis.
Yeah, and this is something that, growing up, we had to live with, because in high school, nobody knows the Palestinian side. So you're like, even the Arab side in general, like the Iraq War in 2003, they're terrorists. We got to go kill them. And I, honestly, I can't. It's hard for me to despise or blame anybody for thinking that way, because that's of course what the media, the news says. There's a one-sided story that's propagated, and the only reason I think that, and maybe I'd like to think it's different, but the biggest reason I know about what's going on is because I had immigrant parents from the region, and as everything was going, I could see the lies that were being touted at the time. But the difficult part was trying to bring that up in class, or trying to make things when you're having to be an expert, because they have, the Israeli point of view is the mainstream point of view. Yes. So you have to be that much smarter or that much more educated to be able to go against what everybody else is common sense or common nature. And so that's what made it so terrifying. Then you always had like everything to lose.
I know. I remember there being a time where I was almost having to, and this is I was 16. So yeah, this was a junior in high school. And I remember in my modern civics class, which I don't even think that exists anymore. That's old.
Probably not.
But I remember basically having to explain that this is an issue of international law, and people not being able to understand international law, and that it could be interpreted by countries differently, and countries could say that, which is what Israel did, that, this is not a law, this is a fact that we have this land, and try to explain to people that, well, when you want land, but you don't want the people on that land, that come with it, this is the situation you're in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it results in violence.
Yes,
and how to break that down even further, I would have no idea. And I remember my teacher having no idea, and then just me feeling defeated. are like powerless. You're
sure.
You're just kind of like, all right, I give up.
And people look at you like you're either crazy or you're a terrorist sympathizer. I mean,
but it's not like that at all.
And I remember just saying, like, yeah, like even when the Iraq War came out, it's like, how could you not be, for the war in Iraq? Those are our troops. They're over there now. And like, and just like, no, this is wrong. Like I remember going on a march with Jen for 2003, and like, when that war happened, that's when I really started understanding and really getting into history and politics, because I got to see on TV all these things that were being said that were like, wait, that's not true. Wait, that doesn't sound right. And then having to go and look it and research it and then understand it and then go through the period of, man, like I have to go out on a limb to talk about this in class, with the very likelihood that I will probably be shunned a little bit by all the people who at home, are like, yeah, we got to kick their ass and kick their gas.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy to think, though, in 2003, 9/11 had just happened, a couple years prior, and flash forward, 18 years, 17 years later, right? A large group of the population is like, what the fuck are we even there for? Why did this even happen, right? And I have to say, during 2003, when that happened, I was like, fuck yeah, Team America. Let's go fucking get the people that, like, what the fuck did they even have to do with it, right? And so just looking back, I fell victim to that. And
because it's easier, though, than trying to have to understand a situation.
Yes.
Like I was saying, it's just so much easier to be like, you know what? Yeah, fuck that. That's not cool. Than to say, wait a second. Explain to me more about why we're in this situation. You have to talk for hours and being young and everything. It's
just not.
Yeah.
Think about the maturity level, though. You have to be like to go against just common knowledge, common fact. Like it's very difficult to, unless you had parents who were people who also did that. It's more likely that you wouldn't even think to go against. Not that it's not even about having to be, brave enough to challenge it. It's like, why would I challenge something that's fact? These guys are terrorists. These guys are, and so then you're telling them the sky's not blue, and then they're just like, what are you talking? And then it's a cognitive dissonance, and just they
Of course,
it's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I learned a lot, in college too. I mean, I had a group project one time with this girl. Oh, I was in partnership with this girl. I was taking this modern warfare class, and we were learning about the Lebanese Civil War and the Egyptian-Israeli war as well. And I remember having to do a group project with this girl, and she was like a typical, I would say, Jewish girl who had gone to Jewish school, who had learned from Jewish a one-way perspective on Israel, that, and as most Jews, I don't know if you had this experience, but most Jews that I know and I'm friends with too, but growing up they have been taught Israel can do no wrong, we owe our allegiance to make sure Israel is protected, and we should all that, and like just the sheer. I remember looking at her, and this was during when Gaza war was going on and Israel was invading Gaza, and she's like, she was like, they're all terrorists, we should just, get rid of them. And I'm like, so she's like, we should just nuke Gaza. And I'm like, so you would just nuke Gaza and wipe out almost 2 million people. So you're saying that a Palestinian life isn't worth an Israeli life? And she's like, no, absolutely not.
You fucking kidding
just
me?
Straight up. And that's when I was really like, but it was in front of the group too, and everybody heard it, and nobody said anything because I think they were all just shocked or also too scared to say anything, because the biggest weapon that was always used against anybody who wants to bring up Palestine or wants to at least call out the other side of it or criticize Israeli policy is you're an anti-Semite.
It's so true.
And it's used today in politics. Like, look at Jeremy Corbyn in the UK.
Yeah.
He's someone who is as a humanitarian for all people, and all that, but he's also someone who spoke out for Palestine. Speaker of the House, there was a witch hunt, or Speaker of the House of Commons, I say.
Yeah.
There was a witch hunt, and labeling the whole Labour Party anti-Semite.
It's insane.
And it's like, and they can still do it, and it's still like, it's a death knell. And the lobby here that's so strong, the Israeli lobby here, and there's books and brave people who have written about it, about how powerful that lobby is. Your political career, your academic career, will be shut down if you wade too far in that Israeli criticism pool.
That is insanity to me, because how does it get so tied up if you speak out anything against Israel, anything, you're automatically an anti-Semite? Like, how is that fucking possible?
But it is because you don't hear a lot.
No,
but you know it works.
Me being Jewish, it's like, and I'm not religious by any means, but culturally, my lineage and all that shit. But I definitely was not brought up. I was the Jewish kid, the only Jewish kid on the block who celebrated Christmas bigger than anyone else. That's the type of Jew I am.
Smart.
Yes. And so at the end of the day, I'm able to kind of look from an outside perspective. But I know being younger, I remember anyone said anything about, Israel, it was like a nail in my fucking heart. It's like, how dare you?
Right.
And now I'm like, well, what the fuck? I mean, we're all human, and humans are good and bad and good. And so just because they are, let's say a Jewish country, Jewish people, a lot of Jewish people live in Israel, that's a fact, right? If you speak out against their politics, right, and the things that they are doing, that does not make you an anti-Semite.
Right.
You're like, there'd be one thing if you're like, the fuck you kike or fuck you whatever, and said like fucking harsh words, like, okay, then I could understand, right? But if you're speaking out against straight politics and what is going on over there, that does not make you an anti-Semite.
And this is there's a dilemma right now, I think, for the Jewish community, because to be quite frank, the Jewish community has always been on the side of civil rights and always been, like they were, the biggest proponents of black civil rights and
for sure
during that time here. But it was always that paradox that when it came to Palestinian rights, it was like that's where the buck stopped, because they were also, like you said, kind of ingrained into Israel is us, we are Israel.
Yep.
And that's not the case. That has been what has kept Israel from having to face any consequence, because the Jewish community in the United States, I mean, they're a powerful community, and
for sure.
And what's even more powerful than the Jewish community is the Israeli, Zionist community, which is essentially allied with the neocon element of politics out here, what makes me hopeful right now is that there's starting to be a fissure. But where before in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, no one ever criticized Israel. It was literally your career would be shut down. I mean, there's documented stories of congressmen or other people losing their jobs after coming out against or saying something negative or criticizing Israel. But now you have it where the Democratic Party is openly starting to say, hey, we need to have an even hand. And this is like a huge win. Just saying that we need to treat the Palestinians and Israelis even-handed is a huge win for us, because I mean, that was something that would just never happen. It was always Israel has the right to defend themselves. And that's a ludicrous statement, because no other occupied people who have no power are not only supposed to, not cause trouble, but also guarantee the safety of their occupiers. Yeah. And if they didn't do that, then they weren't behaving, and they had the right to kill them. It's a weird cognitive dissonance, because on the one hand, at the same time, you have Israelis in Israel. They're both victim and oppressor at the same time, in their own heads. Yeah, they are the victim of the Holocaust. They are a victim because all the surrounding countries don't want to deal with them, and they view them as a colonists, which they are. Which in reality is what they are. But and also at the same time, you have people who have been born in this country as an Israeli, and they don't know any better.
They don't know anything different.
Yes. And they just know that, there's Palestinians out there who hate our guts. And why do they hate our guts? Because we're Jewish. But it's not the case.
They can't be the victim and the hero and leave nothing for the Palestinians.
Right. And so the Palestinians are both, they have the guilt of being a victim and the terrorist at the same time. So it's an untenable position to be in. And they've been in that position really since, at the very least since the 60s, 67, but really since 1948. I mean, the reason our mom grew up in a Lebanese refugee camp is because
they sieged Akka.
Yeah, our grandparents on my mom's side, they had to flee. 1948 is known as Israel independence. To the Palestinians, it's known as the Nakba, or the Great Catastrophe, because that's when there was over 700,000 Palestinians ethnically cleansed from their homes.
Holy shit.
And they would do that by massacring villages. Deir Yassin was a famous one. And they would publicize that to say, this is what will happen when it comes to you.
Yeah.
And so Palestinians fled, but they were always promised that they would be able to return home one day. And that was obviously not the case.
Which is known as the right of return.
Yeah, the UNRWA, UNRWA, is a UN organization that was founded to deal with the Palestinian refugee crisis at that time.
Yeah.
The UN Works and Relief Agency, I think it's UNWRA. And so, since then, you've had Palestinian refugees. And then it happened again. And so at that point, all the Arab countries and Israel that was better equipped, better financed than all the surrounding Arab countries. But while this was going on, this ethnic cleansing, the Arab countries, threw together their armies and declared war. They lost. They were not as well equipped, and they were not as well funded and as well organized as the Zionist forces.
Yes.
And so at the end, I know I'm going to kind of go on tangents.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good. You're good.
Because
great.
What happened at the end of World War II, or I should say at the end of World War I, the whole Middle East was just chopped up to the victors.
They were just like lines on a map, basically.
They were basically arbitrary lines. There was Britain basically promised Palestine to three different groups of people. They had the Balfour Declaration, they had the Sykes-Picot Agreement. I forget what the third one was, but they basically just arbitrarily drew these lines and said, okay, this is going to you guys, it's going to you guys, and this is how it works. And in that same time, that's when the British took control of what they called Mandate Palestine. Okay. And that's where the British were then in control of that area until a little later after the end of World War II. It was World War II that caused the mass immigration, right?
For sure.
Where European Jews came to Palestine.
Absolutely.
But the Zionist movement had begun back before then, right? 1917 with the Balfour Declaration. And you could probably speak to this too, Jen, but it wasn't like the Palestinians, they were never allowed to own more than one or two guns a village, right? So they can never say, because the British were occupying.
They couldn't arm themselves.
They couldn't arm themselves. But they saw this happening after some time, because there was the kibbutzes and Zionists coming. And at first, everybody was fine. But when they started seeing that there was an actual a Zionist motive to create an Israel, a completely separate country where they wouldn't have rights on their own land, there was protests. They would organize and they'd protest, and the British would throw them in prison or whatever. And it wasn't until after World War II, when it was in earnest, that this was happening. The Zionists, I guess you'd say the organizers, had been for years getting money from the European elite kind of Jewish class, because this was what was happening at the time. They were going to create a country there, and they were going to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
The Irgun and the Stern Gang, these were two terrorist groups, Zionist terrorist groups. I forget which one it was. I want to say it was possibly the Irgun. But they blew up the King David Hotel, which had British soldiers in there, because at this time they were ready for the British to leave. They had what they needed, and they wanted to create an Israeli state. And it was in 1948, when they declared their independence, that the actual ethnic cleansing of Palestine happened. And there's a great book by Elon Pappe, Pappe, I want to say. He's an Israeli, and he wrote The Ethnic Cleansing. Kind of lost my train of thought here.
No, it's fine. You're good.
It was at 1948. The Arab armies lost. They got into conflict. The British had actually decided to partition the land before this happened, and they gave a certain percentage to the Israelis and a certain percentage to the Palestinians. And they both had to respect each other's rights. After that 1948 conflict, Israel then captured more of that land. And it was Jordan that took over what's called the West Bank, and it was Egypt that took over Gaza. Okay. So the Palestinians at this point, they don't have they're either occupied, or they're either under Egyptian and Jordanian control, or they're under Israeli control.
Yeah.
So fast forward now, there's other battles and wars going on, but basically fast forward to 1967, you have the 6 Day Arab-Israeli War. And that's when Israel launched a preemptive attack on all the surrounding Arab countries, Syria, Jordan, Egypt. bombed all of the airplanes on the ground. I mean, it was a great strategic maneuver.
Yes.
They said it was a preemptive attack because, quote unquote, there was going to be an imminent attack on them. Mm-hmm. That was proven false.
Financially backed also by a lot. The U.S.
So Israel wouldn't be able to have done any of this without the backing of the U.S.
They were using Apache helicopters.
Why was the U.S. involved in this? Why did they want to be a part of something like this?
It's a great question, and there's probably multiple answers for that. One common answer is that Israel was viewed as the beachhead for the Western world in the Middle East.
Okay,
they were going to be the West's foothold there.
Yes,
but
I actually believe that to be very true.
That would make a lot of sense.
And you have Noam Chomsky. He's a really well-known professor who talks about all kinds of politics. But that's his take, is that Israel is really a pawn of the U.S. and essentially they're our beachhead, and they're kind of under to the benefit of us
for sure.
And, there's also the fact that you do have this. So John Mershimer and Stephen Walt, they were two prestigious professors. One was at Harvard, one was at Princeton, the head of their departments, and they came together in 2006 and wrote a book called The Israel Lobby. Okay. And it basically details the influence that lobby has. And the Israel Lobby is AIPAC and all the affiliated ADL and some all the other ones that on the one hand, one lobbies for essentially Israel's interests, and they're not listed as a foreign agent, but they can openly do it. And the influence that they had, I mean, they even documented that a lot of the reasons we went to the Iraq war was for that influence of those lobbies. No other country aggressively spies on the United States. No other allied country in the United States aggressively spies like Israel does. Jonathan Pollard, he's a spy who was stealing nuclear information, passing it on to the Israelis. You had incidents where hundreds of art students or hundreds of supposed art students or posing as art students going around, selling art, and they were students, but they were actually found to be working for the Israeli spy agency, the Mossad. You had,
so fucking crazy.
There's countless stories of Israeli spying going on here, and also of, just blatant, bribery. Like the information that we got when we went to war with Iraq, we ended up finding that there was the same department, the naval department, we were getting the information for the Iraq war. We captured 2 Israeli spies and imprisoned them from there. But this is everything is on the hush. This is to drive the point home, right?
Yes.
In 1967, and this is something you can absolutely look up, the USS Liberty. And in 1954, the Lavon Affair. These were 2 incidences. The Lavon Affair, let's start there. Israelis posing as Egyptians in Egypt attacked a U.S. embassy, tried to bomb it, and they were caught. And those were Israeli agents because they wanted to try to get Egypt, or the U.S. to go to war with Egypt.
That's fucking crazy.
They were released and they were imprisoned for a while, I imagine. But it wasn't in 1967 when that 6-day war was happening. They tried to do the same thing, and they actually attacked the USS Liberty for, I want to say, 10 hours or some ridiculous amount. Killed U.S. soldiers, and just almost completely obliterated the ship. Like, it's to that ship and the troops that were on that trip, the servicemen on that trip, it's to their credit that they survived that attack. They were attacked for hours, and Israel said that they had no idea that wasn't a U.S. ship, but it was well marked. It was well marked, and they wanted to sink it and blame it on the Egyptians. And so again, this is something that the Johnson administration covered up. Why?
Countless times over and over again.
Catching spies here, overtly killing U.S. ships. The question is why, and that it comes to is it because the Israeli government has too much influence over the U.S., or is it that there's a cabal in the U.S. that wants us to support the Israeli government at all costs?
Okay,
and I'm sure it's both.
For sure, a little bit of both, right?
Yeah. What are the ends? I mean, it's Israel has been an aggressor state to its neighbors. It's invaded Lebanon. It's invaded Egypt. It's invaded Syria. It's invaded every single country since. It's basically a Spartan state. It's just everyone has to serve there. And everybody's on edge because they're constantly surrounded by Arabs. Right? In Sparta, it's the same thing. All the Spartans were constantly surrounded by slaves who they said, they had to also always be on edge. And so. And that's where that paranoid, mentality comes from. But at the end of the day, I couldn't tell you for sure why we support them. Let me just give you one more example.
Okay.
So we're all over Russia's ass right now because we're saying they interfered in our elections and they're meddling in our affairs.
Now, do you believe that?
Well, I don't. To the extent that we're led to believe they are, absolutely not. I don't think they are. But I could be wrong. But I don't believe that they. I tell you, I don't believe that they caused Trump to win the election. That's what I believe.
For sure.
I think there was a lot of other reasons Hillary lost that election than Russia.
I would absolutely agree with that.
But we launched a full-scale investigation. We're ready to impeach, convict, everything because of this. Because supposedly they influenced the elections by buying ads or bots or whatever.
Yes.
But how could you? I mean, when you look at the comparison to how another country, let's say Israel, has interfered in U.S. politics and decision making, and when Obama was negotiating the Iran deal. The most vocal, the only country in person specifically who was against this deal was Netanyahu, who's the prime minister of Israel. And he actually came behind Obama's back because Obama did not want him to come visit Congress. He came, visited Congress, gave a speech about how Iran is a threat and how Iran that they should absolutely not make this deal, and lobbied against the president's own initiative to make this deal. And he did that with a standing ovation in Congress.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that.
Because that's how much that issue is a nonpartisan issue and how much control or influence that another government has on our politics. And now you fast forward to today.
But what does that have to do with Russia not interfering with U.S. elections?
Well,
I mean, because we know that we do it. I mean, so many other nation states do the same exact thing. So to say that they allowed or made Trump win the presidency when obviously Hillary Clinton was a very flawed candidate. But, absolutely, that's a proven fact. But what is your thoughts? Because then you start talking about Netanyahu and all of that. You don't believe that they were a part of it, Russia was a part of it, or they didn't do it, or is it all just a bunch of bullshit?
I think that we don't really care that the Russians did what they did. We absolutely know what they do. We have the NSA. We know what the hell's going on. We just wanted to use it as, not just we. I mean, let's say the Democratic Party.
For sure.
Is using that as because it's something that they can hype up, that they can blow out, blow up.
Absolutely.
Because Russia's the enemy right now.
Yeah.
And use it as a political tool to defeat Trump, or take him down.
Yeah. And as we know, it didn't do a damn thing.
Out of all the things he's done.
No, and that's the craziest thing.
Even the Ukraine thing.
With the impeachment process and all of that, it just blows my mind that this is what they are trying to push so hard on when there's so many other things, just like the fucking emoluments clause. Like, it just blows my mind where it's like, that is a way bigger deal, being a president.
Yeah, and actually the Republicans could say what you just said and go, hey, we didn't, come after this person. There was no consequence for them.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. They could point to
that, but they just don't care.
Yeah, because the Democrats and Republicans, politicians, they only want to talk about the things that they want to talk about.
Yes.
They don't want to ever have to mention a real issue. Like if someone just said what you were saying, like, oh yeah, well look at Netanyahu, they don't want to bring attention to that. They don't want to equate that with anything because the fact of the matter is, and what I was trying to make the point was made, they clearly don't have an issue with foreign powers influencing us as long as it's the people that are paying them, the people that are.
For sure, and I think it's both-sided with both parties. They pick and choose what they want to get behind, they want to get behind, what they don't want to get behind. But just looking back at the past of the just Israeli movement in U.S. politics and what's going on in the Middle East, obviously I'm not a specialist to say exactly what the fuck is going on, but what I can see, what I can read, and just kind of what we've been talking about. Where the hell does this go? How does this change? I know that we've talked about in the past, just kind of the movement that's happening in America at this current moment. Is that enough to push the tide down the road, or what are your thoughts on that? Both of you.
Well, I think I would say I've had a lot more hope and rebirth in hope in just the last couple of years with like the BDS movement coming up and having other organizations recognize us like Black Lives Matter,
yes,
Dream Defenders, people are out there, and politicians like Mark Lamont Hill, who got fired for speaking out for our, but stuck to his, agenda of awareness. I think I've had a lot more hope. I'm seeing a shift and a turn in a really bizarre way, like, almost like, Vice making a documentary about Ramallah DJs, things like that. Stuff like it's almost become oddly a hip thing, which is also scary because then I worry, is this a fad and it's going to fade away? It's just cool to be interested in Palestine right now. But regardless of that, I think it's coming with youth. And when I visited Palestine in 2008, even versus 2011, I saw a completely different place because maybe of social media, maybe of theirs, but of the youth there rising up with their talents and their voice and starting really amazing bands and having incredible exhibitions. And they've created this amazing movement now that has surpassed all of this sort of murky political agendas, and it's becoming more powerful than government and more powerful than politics.
And just so she was saying BDS movement, that's the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. And that's purely grassroots. And that's just appealing to artists, appealing to people to just say, to do what we did against South Africa, which is just boycott them and say, you know what, we're no longer going to do business with you until you can respect human rights.
Absolutely. It's this young, like you said, grassroots movement that's happening all around the world. Everyone from there to Hong Kong, people standing up, and it's a lot of young kids who have grown up in this digital age where information is crossing boundaries in ways we could have never imagined.
Absolutely.
And for me, I'm a huge proponent for the internet. Yes, there's been a lot of bad shit, but there's been so many amazing things. And it is this younger generation that I have strong hope for all different issues all across the globe. So it is a scary but very exciting time that we're living in.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel, like I said, I don't know how hopeful I am, where this can go. I don't believe in a two-state solution, which we could talk about.
Yeah, I think that's...
Yeah. But, and that's a problem because that's going to incite a lot of violence and this might go on forever and ever and ever. But that said, I do see, the rising of our youth and also on the side of Israel as well. A lot more people are saying, I won't serve in the army and going to prison for it.
Well, and one of the things over there that's going on right now, and it's weird how, I mean, I wouldn't say weird, but it's so interesting how all over the world, like you were saying, there's grassroots movement coming up, and there's also fascist governments coming up, and right-wing governments coming at the same time. So it's like the world is polarizing too. Yeah. And like one of the things I think can partially, there's two things I think really credit the kind of you feel that the tide is starting to turn to where people to recognize what's going on in Palestine. One of the things that really broke through the psyche of a lot of people was just the indiscriminate killings in Gaza that went on in 2014, and that was just like, listen, it's really hard to defend, like,
when you're bombing
Apaches and jets, just bombing schools, schools with children, hospitals, whatever, like just bombing civilian areas indiscriminately. And that was a big thing. And the other thing is now it's this marriage that's going on politically between Netanyahu and Trump that really removes, and both of them in America, Trump doing the same thing of removing the facade of what's really what our government really is, which is just a corrupt, debauchery. Like he that's the one thing I can respect about Trump is that he's just doing his thing openly and without shame. Absolutely. And he really removes that face. And same thing with Netanyahu. And now it's become in the government over there, it's become, and you've had like what's that actress's name from The Professional?
Oh, I don't know.
She was on Star Wars.
I don't know.
She's
Natalie Portman?
Natalie Portman.
Okay. Yes.
So she even came out and spoke out against the Israeli government too. And she's a Zionist, and I don't know if she was born over there, but she's Zionist. But she spoke out because, and many of them are starting to speak out specifically against Netanyahu. But like they passed a nation-state law which actually codifies that Jews are treated superior than Palestinians. Like they're becoming more overt about it now, and that's making people uncomfortable because at least before they could pretend like the racism didn't exist and the apartheid didn't exist, but now now that the faces that the racism here is being lifted off
Yes,
the
it
veil,
is.
and the racism in it, and there's those two movements are kind of coming together where now you actually have like the Democrats who can associate and understand a little more about what's going on over there because it's going on here, and now there's that willingness to challenge, and that's what it's not in the Republican Party. I'll tell you that.
No,
It's in
of
the Democratic
course
Party.
not, absolutely. But it
which
is,
tends to be the liberal side
for sure.
And they're willing to look at it now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, the veil is definitely coming off. With Donald Trump becoming the president, just speaking here in the United States of America, we see things that we've never seen before. And he is just very, kind of open about a lot of his shit. But what it does, it allows us to take a peek into what is going on. And I really believe that regardless if he wins or not this next election, this younger generation is in America, in Israel, Palestine, Hong Kong, are really going to start to see what the fuck is going on. And just all the stories and just really the information that they'll be able to get online, they're going to stand up. At least that's what I like to believe. And it's just things that I'm seeing. And yes, you're right. Fascist governments are popping up. And it's a very weird time. But it feels good. But let's just hop right back into it. Growing up, being a Jewish American, for me, I always heard, one state, two state solution. And, for me, it was like, okay, well, that, I don't fucking live there. I don't really know. So anything that I say, is irrelevant. And I guess for the longest time, I was like, well, why doesn't a two-state solution, work out? Why can't two people, just get their shit together and get along? And it's, but I don't understand. I didn't grow up, with the parents that you guys grew up with. I didn't grow up with just a lot of those scenarios in my own personal life. So, Jen, when you said, I don't think a two-state solution is going to work, right? I want to know why, because just kind of paint the picture, because I really don't understand, one state solution, two state solution. My gut is like, well, why can't two people get along, right? But these are two fucking countries, right? So it's a lot different than two people.
Yeah, it's such a good question, because I can only go based, again, of my experience being there and seeing a state not willing to dignify people enough to live with them, not withdraw from the occupied territories that they're taking, not prepared to take out military control, not prepared to give anything back that they've already had, and not willing to, acknowledge their rights. So why, I think is, I could just simply put it and say, they're never going to give that up. And they don't want that is the simple answer. They don't want a two-state solution. There has been so many meetings, especially Yasser Arafat, who I think came the closest to this, to create what we deemed was fair by simply saying you just don't get to annex more land and you have to give up military control of our people and, give us our rights. Not even asking for the return back.
Yeah.
I mean, you got birthright.
Yeah.
We can't go, our parents can't go home.
That's so fucking crazy to me. Like, they can't go there. You can't go home. Like,
and to think this is not in the agreement even, but it's nothing that they are prepared ever to agree to giving
absolutely.
us,
Absolutely.
I can only say that much, but if there is a deeper reason behind that, I would think maybe you might be better.
Well, here's to understand, first of all, like the whole, you have to understand why a two-state solution would no longer work. You have to understand how they got to where we are today, which is like, basically, when I mentioned earlier about 1967, that was the second time. That was a 6-day war, and they took over the West Bank from Jordan, and they took over the Gaza Strip from Egypt, and they took over the Golan Heights from Syria. Wow. They completely dominated this war. There was another war after that called the Yom Kippur War, where it was between Egypt and Syria, but that's not in relation to really what's going on with the Palestinians.
Okay.
So So at this point now, it was 1987 when the whole term occupied territories came. Because when the Israelis took over the West Bank and they took over the Golan and they took over the Gaza Strip, those were now the occupied territories of Israel. And they became internationally, legally, occupiers of a people.
Yeah.
And the UN passed a resolution. They passed two resolutions, Resolution 242, and I forget the other one. But these are resolutions basically requiring that Israel retreat back to pre-1967 borders and let the Palestinian people have their land back, become unoccupied.
Makes sense, right?
That was passed by the UN and ratified. And that never happened, right? So, but the whole thing was, okay, well, let's figure out the peace process. We got to have peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So let's have them amicably work it out. Because the U.S., again, they're the enforcers of the UN. I mean, up until, even now, if they don't want something to happen, something doesn't happen in the UN.
Yes.
Okay. And Israel and the UN had a very close, Israel and the United States, a very close relationship. Over the last couple decades, almost every resolution that would condemn Israel's occupation or their settlements or whatever has been vetoed by the United States and the UN. So they have that protection. But fast forward, so understanding that there's the occupied territories, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to understand that starting around in the 80s, the Israelis, who again they're supposed to, this is occupied territory. They were supposed to. During the 1967 war, another 450,000 refugees were created from the West Bank, and others were given Israeli citizenship, and others were staying just as residents of the West Bank.
Okay.
But 450,000 were expelled, and so that further worsened all the refugee camps all over the surrounding countries.
Absolutely, for sure.
And the other, just as a side note, like the refugee camps, they're not given citizenship in those countries, so they're just without.
So they're just like nomads, no country, nothing,
stuck in this international
in this limbo, in this fucking limbo.
And that's why they have no rights in all the countries, in Lebanon and other places.
I know, but again, that brings international law.
Yeah.
It's
these
so poorly designed so that countries can get away with doing this. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I feel like Israel has used that as their tactic time and time again to prove that they are within the rights of international law to be, quote unquote, governing these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Command and conquer, and it's just fucking crazy. But getting to back to the point, two-state solution. In theory, it sounds like a great idea, but what it sounds like is that it's not. It's very one-sided.
Yeah, and I'll kind of fast forward through the whole thing. But what I was saying is that the settlements were starting to be built in the 80s, right? So settlements are basically Israel bringing in Israeli Jewish citizens onto the land of Palestinians where they live. They'll under auspices of not having the right permits or whatever, they'll destroy the Palestinians' home and build an Israeli settlement on that area. So they have built. So over the course of the last 30 years, they've been building settlements, moving Jewish settlers into the land on the homes of Palestinians, on whether it's moving into their home directly and just taking it over, or demolishing it and then building a brand new settlement, and then taking all the water resources and and then they have a checkpoint from every settlement. This is what the West Bank is when you hear about these checkpoints. They have if you want to take your kid to the hospital, you have to go through maybe 2 or 3 checkpoints. You
have to get a visa.
What?
You have to get a certificate.
So if you're Palestinian, you have to get a visa. You have to go through checkpoints.
Yes, your life is just a constant humiliation because every day you're reminded of the occupation. Like if they, there's cases of women having to give birth in their car because they can't get to a hospital because of the checkpoints.
That's insanity.
It's just a complete militarized security state throughout all these occupied territories and then Palestinians being further driven into like reservation status, and that's kind of what, and that seems to be the de facto or like the ultimate goal of the Israeli state is to just have all of it and stick Palestinians in these reservations.
And where are they going to go? Like, what? Where do they have to go? They just let these people just live like nomads and huts and
more like prisoners. Like we were saying, they give them jobs for very low pay. They're like modern day slaves in some of these camps.
And the Israelis just allow it.
You mean the Israeli
citizens?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the Israeli citizens as a whole.
A lot of them don't know what's going on. They're so protected from that. They're so shielded from the reality of it. A lot of them, when you say, I know when I was visiting with friends in 2011, and they were like, I just want to hop over to Tel Aviv and visit a friend of mine or something. I'd be like, okay.
Right.
And they would go and they would talk to their friends there, and they'd be like, oh, I'm staying in Bethlehem with my friend, and they're like, why would you go there? Like, they were like, we've never been there. We would never go there.
Wow.
And they're like horrified. And she's like, no, it's like totally fine. But she was so shocked. I'm shocked too.
Yeah.
And then I would go myself into Jerusalem, and the process of that being, also humiliating as American, because I have a Palestinian name and I'm on the register and they know your whole family. They just stop you then and there, and that's a process. But after that, going in there and realizing, some of the Palestinians that were born there have never even been to the West Bank. They don't know unless they're told or they see it for themselves. But it's heavily monitored.
Can you leave?
So no, you can't. But you can't go necessarily in and out of the occupied territories. Like,
could you get an airplane to fly out like a Palestinian? No.
No, Palestinians, they have no control over their airspace. They have no military. I mean, that's the misconception. You think there's two countries. It's not a country. The Palestinians don't have a military. They have what security forces that the Israeli government allows them to have to monitor some of their own people.
Okay.
But that's it. They don't have. That's why they only have guerrilla tactics and more unconventional warfare.
And that's what, in the United States, when those things happen, it's a terrorist attack and things of that nature. That's happening. I don't know, I guess I'm asking, is that happening because just everything has been stripped away from them, that they have to resort to, guerrilla style tactics and
well,
terrorism.
That's the thing is that they don't have the ability to fight in like a modern way. And every time they've tried to organize peacefully, that's also met with violence.
Okay.
So like even now when there's peaceful protests, you have Palestinians who are imprisoned for organizing them. Even like I mentioned my dad.
They're also getting killed. They're getting shot at. Like the doctor, she was just on-site medic, and they shot her in the chest.
And now it's
and
gotten
who is
so
this?
worse.
Who is this?
Rima something, I think. But the thing is, we see this because we see what the posts that come out of the Middle East, because we're friends on Instagram, and we follow the news articles that will show you the actual other side of what's going on, which is, Palestinians are shot in cold blood.
They're just moving targets
on a
field,
like a daily basis without any repercussions. A Palestinian could throw a rock at a tank and he can get years in prison. A child can. They imprison children.
My gosh.
And they don't give their parents the right to be with them when they're detained.
In court or anything.
People are just revolved through the prison system there as a natural part of life.
Okay.
And so the thing is, and on the opposite side, the Israelis, they can shoot a kid and it may never even be investigated, or if it is, he may only get 6 months in prison with parole, because it doesn't, in like that girl I mentioned, they don't treat Palestinian life the same as Jewish life over there, or even Israeli life. You could even be Arab Jewish over there, and it's still frowned upon. What we called Mizrahi Jews. Okay. Because it's really just become like the ruling classes in Israel are descendants of Russian and Eastern European, of white areas. And so they also kind of have this ingrained hatred of Arabs and racism that's only gotten so much worse there. I mean, now you have the politicians that are openly racist over there and say that Palestinians just Palestinian mothers give birth to snakes, and that's like the head of the justice system saying that, you know.
And no one does anything. No one says anything.
In the West Bank, there was this kid, I forget his last name, but the whole family, their house was set on fire by terrorists with them inside, and almost the whole family died, and one of the family members was a toddler, and it was burned alive, and the settlers were finally brought in, and they were tried, and they got maybe a year, and then they got let out early.
They had early release. They only served 6 months.
Why?
And you had chance. Ali is burning on the grill, just openly just taunting the family that burning their toddler alive, and it was just okay.
But that's because, again, they don't acknowledge them as human beings.
So this is why I guess.
But this is not
that's
all.
Why why the Palestinians have to resort to these whatever tactics, because it's just enough is enough, right?
I mean, it's hard if you put yourself in that position. What would you do if your life was just nothing to live for in a lot of cases? Then you're gonna act out of desperation.
Of course.
But there are organizations that are trying to, and Jewish Israeli organizations that are trying to bring the truth out. So you have B'Tselem, that their entire mission over there is to document, war crimes, and they're targeted by the government, but they're getting more and more heat. But they exist. You have Breaking the Silence, which is former Israeli soldiers coming out and speaking about what they did and what happened in the occupied territories. Yeah.
So change.
So you have it, but the thing is, it's changing almost. The pressure against those groups are becoming bigger over there. Over there right now, it's actually also even a slander just to be called a lefty. Like, it's even the thought of that you would like right now they're going through some big political situation because they don't have they can't form a government because Netanyahu's been indicted for bribery and corruption. He's a corrupt for those reasons he's being indicted. And you have the other parties who there's like certain religious parties over there that just don't want to work with other parties, and you have certain parties that won't work with Netanyahu specifically. So they can't form a government there right now. But the problem is that they could form a government. All one party has to do is allow the Palestinian members of parties to be part of that government. But that's unthinkable. That not even to form a government would they ever think of allowing the few Palestinian members of the Knesset over there is what they call their Congress to ever consider them actually being part of a government because they're Palestinians.
So I think to answer your question, they're just not willing.
Absolutely.
And the why is, just because I think they're going to try till the day that they die to, acquire all of that land and just have their own state. And
yeah, but it does sound like, like these different organizations and the things that are happening in America, and just people being more aware of the atrocities. You guys coming on and talking about this, right? Putting it out to the world, right? And I do keep on bringing this up. That is why I had you come on, because, there were times like, am I talking too much or whatever? Like, no, fucking talk, because that's what this is all about. Back to Your Story is about your story. And we all have a story. And with everything that's going on in the world, I just want people like the both of you to come somewhere and share, and hopefully people are listening and they can take nuggets from this, so that in the coming generation, in decades to come, things will change. This is what I like to hope, because if I am wrong, then all of this is going to go to shit. It's all going to go to shit for the Palestinians. It's all going to go to shit for the Americans. It's all going to go shit for everything, right? And so we, as a society, need to not take a blind eye to actions like this. But it is very scary when you do have a government that is kind of closing they're putting a veil over this to their citizens, and if they don't fully know what the fuck is going on, I do hope that the organizations. What were the two that you brought up again?
B'Tselem. Yeah, it's B''TCELEM, I think is how you spell it.
Okay.
And then Breaking the Silence.
Yeah. The organizations like that can make a change, but I don't doubt that they're taking a lot of pressure, from the Israeli government. To you, they're a Zionist. What is a Zionist? You brought it up, so if people don't know, I would like for you to share.
Yeah, I guess the simplest, the simplest version of what a Zionist is the belief that the land of historical Palestine should be a Jewish centric nation, to the exclusion of its other citizens, non-Jewish citizens.
For sure, that makes sense. And so, even just kind of looking at Americans, what the hell does it mean to be American, right? We, so many time and time again throughout, civilization, it's been this command and conquer, because as American citizens, this isn't even our fucking land too, right? But it just fucking racks my mind that this whole two-state solution, can't work. But it's if someone doesn't want it to work, then obviously it's never going to work. But I am hopeful, and that's all I can be.
Yeah, and so that's like the predicament, right? Because the two-state solution. Because the reason why we would say that they don't want it to work is because they would never want they believe that the whole of Israel, the former Israel, should be Judea and Samaria, like they should be part of their country.
Yeah.
And they should rule over it. And but on the other hand, here's the thing. So they wouldn't ever allow that viable Palestinian state there other than these reservations. But then what's the other option, right? So then you have you don't want a two-state solution. Okay, what about a one-state solution?
Yeah.
What about you just grant us rights? That's
For sure.
Just say, okay, you know what? Have the name Israel. We just want to be treated like humans, and let's just have rights and give the Palestinians the vote. And that's a big problem because Palestinians are, Arabs Palestine, they're the majority.
Yeah.
Not even including the refugees because they still haven't given the right of the refugees. They won't even consider that, which is international law, is the right of refugees to return to their homeland. And these refugees for, decades have never been allowed to return. So they have no homeland, no rights in these other countries.
And no one enforcing those laws.
And no one enforcing. So yeah, and exactly. So there's no one enforcing. So, but that's the other problem is that, so you give the Palestinians vote, they have the majority now. I mean, they're gonna pass laws that are, maybe not only favorable to just the, the elite that are already there,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, of
So
course.
so then what solution is there? That's why the status quo has been the status quo for so long, because that's what the Israelis are okay with. They're okay with their people here not having rights, being quasi people, that they can not have to they can have a cheap labor force because they control their entire living. And then, even the fifth of the population that they allow to have citizenship in Israel, which are fifth Arab, they basically just shun them and say, okay, well, you get to pretend like you're part of the government, but you're not really. So it's just a show.
A one-state solution is scarier for them.
And so it's scary for them. That's why they're in a real crisis right now. The crisis of it's almost like when they say existential crisis. I mean,
Yes.
It's part of why they're at war so much is because they need to be focused on something. Because when you actually come down to it, they can't have any settling. They have to have just complete war domination. Because if you come down to let's work this out, it's give up the majority or have a split up the country and have two equal states. And it's
and
not
give up
acceptable.
what you've taken.
And give up what
But a two-state solution would, I mean, just from the outside now looking, it would definitely sound better if they don't want to give up their rights, fucking split that shit. But it's.
But let me ask you this though: why, if you're thinking, the two-state solution would be the better option, right? Because then you get
no.
but let's just say that's the thought right there, right? Well, I would agree. I would say, why not? You can have a majority, just give it two equal states, and you can have your own state, do whatever you want with it, whatever.
For sure.
But why then would you, if you're actually trying to negotiate that in earnest and try to come to a real amicable agreement, because that's what the whole peace process was about, why would you through that whole time continually build settlements and put the Jewish people into the land that you're supposed to be giving back at the end of the day? It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. Probably because if there ever does come a time and it's a two-state solution, there'll be such small land for the Palestinians and all this land for the Israelis. That's the only way that I could think at, just kind of on the brink of the moment. But history will tell in many years to come what the heck is going to happen.
All we learn from history is we don't learn.
We'll see. I mean, it's a tough situation. It's sad for all parties in that because I think that it's almost a class thing too. That even if shit ever hit the fan over there, the wealthy could go back to other countries that there's some dual citizenship, and it's the people the people that can't leave,
of course,
that are the ones who bear the brunt of the problem,
Well, that's how it happens all the time. Always. Growing up, your parents talked a lot about this? They were open about it, or?
Our dad would talk a lot about this because he's kind of a historian. He's a big history buff, and it was a point of pride for him to be able to kind of explain the history.
Yeah,
for sure.
I do think my mom talked about it, but she talked about it on a more personal level, like her experience as a refugee child. And how she dealt with discrimination and the feeling again of being powerless,
For sure.
And not having a voice. That was her thing, and I think she skirted around sort of the politics behind it, because, you know, she worked so hard, I think, to start over.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think her parents also sort of dismissed it too. Like, it's not important now. This is where we are. This is your new life, sort of thing.
Just throw it into the road.
And it's not until, I'd say, in the last 5 years to 10 years, my mom got more vocal about the politics side. So most of this information growing up was coming from my dad.
Okay.
Whereas, like, you know, he left out the sort of personal struggle.
Yeah.
My mom was all about the personal struggle.
So kind of got both sides of it, which is really fantastic. And having, you know, parents that went through all of this firsthand.
Yeah, I remember, like, my mom said in school, she used to see kids drawing a picture of a kid with devil horns and writing Palestinian on it. And she was really, you know, that really tore her up, you know.
Oh my gosh.
But what's funny about that is I remember reading about that happening to Jews in Germany.
That.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And I remember telling my mom and her not believing that could be the case, you know, or, you know, but saying, well, probably, you know. But yeah, so I think, you know, when I had read that, you know, happening, or, you know, people reporting that happening during the time of the Holocaust, I just felt like this isn't supposed to be happening.
No, you know, you've had the Jewish people that throughout history, time and time again, you know, shit has happened to them, and then especially with the Holocaust in most recent memory. I would just like to, I don't even know, but what I'm thinking is that they're kind of like, well, fuck this is ours, and I don't give a shit about anything else, right? Because all of these things have happened, and if we ever let anything else like that happen again to us, well, you know, that's on us, right? But that is a poor outlook on it, you know. Circumstances are circumstances, and the Holocaust was fucking terrible. I mean, I remember growing up and my mother telling me the story that she went to her aunt, and she's like, "Oh, why do you have numbers?" She asked my grandma why she have numbers on her, and she told her about the Holocaust and everything like that. And you know, that always stuck with me. But you know, going through all of that as a people to then, you know, cause pain on another group of people, it just tears my heart up. It really does, because it's not fair to happen to anyone going through these things.
Well, like, you know, I mean, it kind of also comes back to, you know, abusers being abused.
Yep, so, always.
This is, I think, like, the Israeli-Palestinian thing is just like a macrocosm of an abusive relationship.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
I always talk about this, and then I'll let you share your point. You talked enough, boy. Jesus. No, straight up. But I share this point. You're so funny. I share this point that you know, if you have a son and a daughter, and they grow up and the father is very abusive to the mother, the daughter watching the dad hit the mom, she's going to be more prone to accept that from a significant other, and then the son will be more prone to, you know, laying his hands on his significant other. And I grew up knowing that firsthand. Watching the things that my father did to my mom, did to me. And I always knew that was not the way to fucking handle a situation. And, even when he would hit me, it would just make me act out more, right? But you take that and you put that on a fucking large scale, like, you know, Israel, like you guys just said, and it's the abuser acting as the abusee, or the abuser. You get what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So now you can chime in, brother.
No, I think I was gonna
Alex, behave, Alex, behave.
Come on, man, get your shit together. No, seriously, go.
No, I agree. I agree with what you were saying. Yeah. I think that it's I think the only way that peace is ever going to be achieved is for both sides just to forgive, and have to move forward, because there is no other way out without massive violence and death, and everybody just saying, okay, listen, let's figure out a way to get along in a healthy relationship. Yeah. And we've passed. I mean, it's like, you know, there's like the hardest part is like you want justice, right? So it's like how at what level is there justice and what level is it revenge? So it's like you got to figure out a just way to forgive.
That's why my hopes with the youth.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I feel like they want this too.
Yeah.
When I listen to them, you know, they're ready to move on. They want better leaders. They want change. They're a movement. And I
Yes.
think that this is the only way forward through forgiveness, but not going to come from anyone but the...
No, for sure. It's truly a pivotal moment where we make these choices. You know, you go left or you go right, and it'll take time to tell. You know what the right choice was with the youth, but I am very, very hopeful that they will bring real and positive change. You know, it was. Having you guys come on today, it means a lot to me, because talking about real issues that are going on in the world from the point of view that you guys, you know, saw it, you know, what your parents went through, and the life and the hardship and the struggle and the fucking ingenuity that they did to create two amazing, and I'm sure four amazing children, but at least two that I'm seeing right in front of me. It blows my mind, and so it is a really, really exciting time, and I just want to thank you guys so much for being a part of this journey with me, and thank you so much for, you know, really sharing your guys' story, because I do believe that a lot of people will take a lot from this podcast, and you know, it just this is fucking a lot, and I really look forward to the future. I really do. You know, I know you always got something to chime in, so chime in. No. It does.
Well, I really appreciate you having us on. This was an awesome experience, and I've always had it's always been a pleasure just to have a conversation with you about real shit. So thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me, you know, join in the bromance.
Yeah.
I feel very special.
Yes, you should.
No, but thank you. It's very refreshing. And when Alex told me about you, you know, I was like, really?
Really, that fucking guy.
but your authenticity and your curiosity and just that genuine excitement to learn has been refreshing. So thanks.
Thank you. That is, as I was sharing with you guys in the beginning, you know, for me, going through this journey is really about bringing all of my, you know, biggest issues, regrets, thoughts, ideas to the forefront, because I am personally at this point in my life where life is, I say this every fucking podcast, I'm like a broken record. Life is like, it's a blink of an eye, and not everyone on the face of this planet has the opportunity that the three of us have. Just talking about you know, what is going on in the world today, you know, they don't have the same rights and freedoms that we do. So if you are put in a place like we are, you just gotta push through. Life can be fucking hard, but to live a life of no regrets is very hard. But it is achievable, because at the end of the day, you know, what do we got to show for? So thank you guys again. Seriously appreciate it. I know this won't be the last time. All right.
Masalam.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to Back to Your Story. Have a good night. Ay, 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 ay.